Tanse, happy Monday. I'm Chris Nachkate. Welcome to APTN National News Daytime. Me, Gwetch, for joining us. A total of 62 First Nation, Inuit and Métis items have been released from the Vatican's collection and arrived in Montreal over the weekend. Indigenous leaders have long called on the Vatican to return Indigenous items in their collection as part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. Representatives spoke with the late Pope Francis about the items in 2022 when they met with him in Rome to discuss the legacy of church-run residential schools. They were given a private viewing of some of the items held by the church during that visit. Some of the items had not been seen by the public in decades. The items, many of them more than 100 years old, include an Inuit sealskin kayak and Cree winter gloves. Assistant Professor Cody Grote from Western University will join me later in the show to speak more about the item's significance and the return to Canada. The Ontario Provincial Police have announced that they have found human remains as part of an ongoing disappearance and death investigation for a resident from the Kenora area. According to the OPP, on Wednesday, November 26th, the remains of 21-year-old Mackay Pelly Scott were found in the Washagamis Bay First Nation area. Pelly Scott, who is from Grassy Narrows First Nation, was reported missing on October 26th, weeks after he was last seen in Kenora. On November 14th, 24-year-old Terrence Cherry was charged with first-degree murder and indignity to a dead body. Terrence's older mother, 43-year-old Una Cherry, has also been charged with accessory after the fact to murder. Both made another court appearance last Thursday in Kenora, with their new bail hearing set for January 12th. The OPP thanks everyone involved in bringing those to justice, and the investigation continues this week. Saskatchewan RCMP are in need of the public's help in locating a man they say was involved in an armed robbery in Muscadet First Nation just southeast of Prince Albert. On Thursday, December 4th at around 4 a.m., Prince Albert RCMP responded to a report of a firearm discharged at a home in Muscadet. When they arrived, they determined 3 masked men forced their way into the home, fired a gun, and used bear spray, demanding the victim's phone and wallet. RCMP have since charged 36-year-old Brennan Seawap with a number of offenses, including robbery with a firearm. No word yet if the other 2 suspects have been identified. Seawap is 6'5", 200 pounds with brown eyes and black hair. He has multiple tattoos, including script on the right side of his neck. If anyone sees Seawap, do not approach him and instead call police. The Abenaki Council of Odanak and Walinak has launched an advertising campaign on the U.S. state of Vermont's television. The goal is to raise awareness about the misrepresentation of Abenaki identity in their state, which is an hour's drive from the Odanak and Walinak communities on the U.S. side of the border. APTN's Stephanie Dusav has that story.
Vermont officially recognized 4 fake Abenaki groups.
The advertisement is the latest action taken against a false Abenaki representation in Vermont. The 30-second television commercial will run for 1 year on Vermont's major television stations, including Fox 44, ABC 22, WCAX Channel 3, and Vermont Public Television.
Our cultural heritage has been flawed, has been appropriated, and they are erasing us by replacing us.
Councillor Jacques Watteau explains the target audience.
The state of Vermont, the legislator who went through a flawed process of recognizing these tribes in the state of Vermont.
This isn't heritage.
Without naming them, the ad states that certain people falsely believe themselves to be Abenakis, but have little to no Indigenous ancestry.
If you can show us any difference than what we found, please do.
The full genealogical report of these people can be found online. University of Ottawa professor Daryl LaRue produced it back in October, when the Abenaki Council of Odanak released it publicly.
For Brenda Gagne, the chief of the Missisquoi Abenaki Nation, she is of 99.9% European heritage.
It tracked the descendants of 8 public figures claiming to be Abenaki, including a renowned writer, an academic, and 4 Vermont chiefs of Abenaki tribes recognized by the state in 2011 and 2012.
This kinship has to be Indigenous, not French-Canadian, as the genealogical report showed that they're basically the descendants of the migrants that went to work in New England.
Back in the 90s and before the internet, Watso admits that members from his community participated in the cultural revitalization of Vermonters believing them to be Abenakis.
So people, when they came back to claiming Abenaki heritage, we knew that people were left behind in the state of Vermont.
Elder Denny Obamsawin also admitted to participating in this transmission.
I am among those who, in good faith, show them dances and language and tradition like basket weaving.
In the advertisement, the Abenakis of Odanak and Wolinak say that they are the sole guardians of the Abenaki identity. According to Watso, this advertising campaign seeks to exert pressure to change Vermont's laws and regulations regarding the recognition of Indigenous tribes. However, he says that their goal is to revoke Vermont's recognition.
We're not going to the state of Vermont to tell them that we want retribution or land claims or a casino or working with Hydro-Quebec. We want to render justice to the integrity of our culture and our ancestors.
APTN News contacted the chief of the Abenakis Nation of Missisquoi in Vermont, Brenda Peretta-Gagné, but we had not received a response prior to broadcast. Stéphanie Desève, APTN News, Montreal.
The city of Saskatoon recently conducted a count of people without stable housing. With cold weather moving across the prairies, city officials and the fire department say the increase in the number of unhoused people is presenting a safety concern for those living in encampments. APTN video journalist Rachel May reports.
And I will say it was really heartbreaking to find out that one of the people that was staying in an encampment at that time in Saskatoon was actually from Denier Beach, and they lost their home in the wildfires this past summer.
April Chief Calf is the MLA for Saskatoon Westview and opposition shadow minister for housing. She says people from northern communities have come to Saskatoon and ended up on the streets. The annual point-in-time homeless count was held October 16, 2025, from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., with over 250 volunteers collecting data on unhoused people. The count found 1,931 people in Saskatoon struggling to find stable housing. Chief Calf, who volunteered in the count, says the situation is worse than it appears.
And so I will say that I know that there were some folks who weren't wanting to speak to us, and so they're not included in the data. So I actually know the number is higher than what we think.
One pit count category included encampments. Deputy Chief Yvonne Raymer of the Saskatoon Fire Department says the public is urged to report encampments as they can pose safety risks to both occupants and the public.
You know, in the last 2 months, we've had 90 encampment fires, so the risks of the number of encampments that continue to go up, the risk of fire is more imminent than ever, and we had 2 injuries recently. Luckily, we have not had a fatality, but this is definitely something we want to prevent.
Raymer says at every encampment removal, people are offered support to find shelter and connected with social service resources. Director of Development and Planning for the City of Saskatoon, Leslie Anderson, says the city is currently seeking solutions to address those living on the streets.
Our focus has been and continues to need to focus on finding new and building new housing.
Anderson says the unhoused population is growing, so it's important to be compassionate.
I think it's important to recognize that these are all individuals. Every person has their own story, their own reasons, their own conditions for what has led them to where they are today.
Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
A longtime Indigenous columnist in Saskatchewan is closing a chapter in his career after 3 decades. That story after the break. Welcome back. Students from the Samson Cree Nation in Alberta recently completed their Class 1 commercial driving class, and APTN was invited to attend their graduation ceremony last Wednesday. Our Chris Stewart was there and brings us this story.
Canada has a critical shortage of truck drivers. The job search website Indeed shows over 2,000 job openings across Canada, high-paying jobs. And the Samson Cree Nation in Treaty 6 territory has their first graduates for their new Class 1 driver training program. Class 1 allows you to drive any commercial vehicle. Shay Yellowbird is the Skills Link coordinator for Samson. He says their new Class 1 program was financed by the Alberta government. The nation has partnered with external partners to help find jobs for its grads.
We made sure that we had those partnerships in place with industry. So we got letters of support from different local employers and also industry. So now after they graduate, we actually had a few students go to work on their own, but now we're just waiting to find those partnerships with the other ones.
About half of the graduating class have already found work, like Joseph Baptiste.
I'm actually working right now. I'm actually working for Erminskin Technical Services. I'm a Class 1 commercial driver for them. I operate a water truck, waste management side too also, so like the dump truck and then like the roll-off truck, and it's pretty much all I do all day long.
Willis Little Poplar credits his trainer for helping him succeed.
Our instructor was really good. Like, he's really got to know him pretty well, and we'd joke around, but he would always be focused on what we were doing, and yeah, he taught me a lot.
Little Poplar says it was fun, but he took it seriously, like ensuring his truck was ready for inspections.
I started mastering like what I need to do. I recorded all my inspections. I just put it on, have my phone out, and just do inspections, like 5 different inspections, and I got it down pat. And yeah, I thought it was fun, and I'd recommend it to anybody.
He's hoping to start his new career as a waste disposal truck driver. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Wetaskiwin, Alberta.
Congratulations, everyone. We wish you the best. Longtime Saskatchewan columnist Doug Cuthan, known for amplifying Indigenous stories, is closing a chapter in his career. CTV's Stacey Hine now on his more than 30 years of storytelling and educating Canadians, new and old, about who Indigenous people are.
For more than 3 decades, Doug Cuthan sat down each week to write about Indigenous communities, history, and struggles.
By writing a column for people, I hope to educate them a little bit about what the topic was and sort of open their eyes as to what was going on.
He recently signed off with his final column, retiring a year earlier than planned to focus on his health after a prostate cancer diagnosis.
So I'm really sort of following my business plan, just a little bit earlier, that's all.
For Cuthan, a member of Little Pine First Nation, storytelling extends beyond print, directing and producing several films, including the award-winning documentary Donna's Story. He also spent 4 years hosting Indigenous Circle before passing the torch and mentoring longtime journalist Nelson Bird.
Doug has done so much for the Indigenous community, the First Nations and the Métis in this province, and giving people a voice.
Cuthan's work earned him several honors, including the Saskatchewan Order of Merit and an honorary doctorate. Historian Bill Wazer nominated him for that degree to recognize his work.
He was constantly reminding his reading audience that we're all treaty people and that treaties require 2 partners to make it work.
Retired columnist Murray Madrick says Cuthan stood out for his clear and concise writing.
He told a story in a way that anyone could understand it or understand the issues.
As Cuthan reflects, he says he's proud of how Indigenous representation has grown in media.
We've grown a long ways. And so I'm really happy to have been part of that. I'm really proud to be a part of that.
And even as he puts down his column, his work continues with new film projects still ahead. A lifetime of storytelling that's not quite done yet. Stacey Hine, CTV News, Saskatoon.
The holiday season is fast approaching, and this year at APTN National News, we are bringing you the 12 language days of Christmas from across the country. And as today marks 12 work days left before Christmas, we start you off with the Michif language.
Tanche bonjour, Samson Lamontagne de Schnickashun. Les noms de famille, c'est les Lamontagne, Katernick, Parot, Boucher, Desjardins, Saint-Ange, Grant. Ma parentie à la Rivière-Rouge, la vallée, Oshchiwak, Regina, Doshchin, Saskatoon, Newikin. To say Merry Christmas in the three different types of Michif, for Northern Michif, you can say Miu Manitou Ogisagao. And that's for Northern Michif. In Southern Michif, you can say Joyeux Noël. And in French Michif, you can say Joyeux Noël. So I know like the Miu, that means good, and Manitou means like God or Creator, Ogisagao Day. And there's a lot of Catholicism within Michif as well, especially the French Michif. A lot of them are Catholic, Kayash, a long time ago, and still to this day. When I think about Christmas, I think about community. So in Northern Michif, you would say Mama We Yawin, Mama We Yawin. That's community in Northern Michif. In Southern Michif, you would say Oshkweyak, Oshkweyak. And in French Michif, you would say Communauté. You would have a lot of different traditions, and that's the next word. So in Northern Michif, to say tradition, you can say Kayati Pematsuim. Kayati Pematsuim. In Southern Michif, you could say Kayash Oshche, Kayash Oshche. And in French Michif, you could say Tradition, Tradition. And every family is a little bit different.
Thank you to T.R. Wheatley and our editors for putting together that item. We now want to tell you about the results of last week's web poll questions. Last week we asked, should the tanker ban along BC's north coast be lifted to allow oil exports? 66% said no, 25% said yes, and 9% were unsure. Our second question was, do you feel the Assembly of First Nations is representing the priorities of grassroots people? 32% said sometimes, 32% were unsure, 24% said no, and 12% said yes. And our last question was, did you participate in Black Friday sales this year? 70% said no, 19% said yes online, 7% said yes in store, and 4% said both. Thanks to all who took the time to vote. Go to our website at aptnnews.ca to check out this week's new web poll questions. We'll have them listed on the right-hand side of the homepage. Mohawk academic Cody Grote is up next to talk more about those 62 Indigenous items returned from the Vatican. Stay with us. Me, Gwetch, for staying with us. Charlottetown -7, Halifax rain and -5. Anujiwak clear skies and -21. La Grande River -7. Quebec City -14. Montreal -14. Peterborough -9. Toronto -5. -16 in Sudbury. Elliott Lake -6. Puckatawagan -19. The Paw -16. -12 in Winnipeg. Barons River -14. -16 in Saskatoon. Sun's out in Regina at -9. Stony Rapids -25. Meadow Lake -13. -16 in Grand Prairie. Fort McMurray -15. Calgary 2. Edmonton -6. Vancouver cloudy and 8. Bellacoola -2 and rain. Fort Nelson -22. Dease Lake -26. -42 Burr in Dawson. Mayo -39. -22 in Wati. Fort Simpson -21. Tuktoyaktuk -20. Paulatuk -22 and sunny. Chesterfield -17. Baker Lake -29. And Arctic Bay -21. Agulik -15. Cody Grote is Mohawk from the Six Nations of the Grand River and an assistant professor in the Department of History and Indigenous Studies program at Western University in London, Ontario. He joins us now from Brantford to tell us more about those Indigenous items returning from the Vatican. Cody, thanks for speaking with us again. As of Saturday, a total of 62 Indigenous items from the Vatican's collection has been returned to Canada. Can you talk about the significance of some of these items, how old they are, and what it means to Indigenous people to have these items back?
A lot of these items entered the Vatican's hands as part of a 1925 museum exhibit that the Vatican held to celebrate the successes of missionary endeavors. And obviously we know the successes of the Catholic Church means different things to Indigenous nations and to the Church. So these items are viewed very much by the Vatican as artifacts. They've been housed behind glass display cases. But for a lot of Indigenous nations, these are cultural ancestors returning home for the first time. Now, we don't necessarily have a full list of items or photos of what these are, but that's partially based on what we've heard from elders and knowledge keepers who want these items to be assessed for their cultural significance before we publicly disclose what these items might be.
Can you talk about what some of the possible things Indigenous groups can learn from these items?
So first of all, just understanding the context of their transfer. So the Vatican is really framing these as being gifts from Indigenous nations to the Church in the 1920s. Again, contestable because that's when the Indian Act was really at its most assimilatory. What we can probably see is the revitalization of culture just by looking at the craftsmanship, looking at the materials used for some of these items. We do know that in the 1920s, there was that very intentional attempt to eradicate our cultures. So being able to have these items repatriated to community and having the chance to handle them with elders and knowledge keepers and youth might be a chance to bring back a lot of our knowledge.
After the items were welcomed with ceremony in Montreal from the various Indigenous groups, can you explain where the items will go next and what will the next steps be?
So the Vatican, again, very clearly said that these are not being repatriated directly to Indigenous nations. These are being donated to the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops in a church-to-church transfer with the expectation they'll then enter the hands of Indigenous nations. So first they'll be at the Canadian Museum of History. They'll be assessed for their relative condition from a museum perspective. And then the three national Indigenous organizations will have a say in interpreting these items and deciding which nations and communities might be the best stewards and caretakers.
And finally, Cody, do you think we will see more ceremonies like this from other museums and churches in Canada and internationally where Indigenous items will be returned?
Repatriation has been a really slow process in Canada for cultural institutions, but it is quite significant that we've seen ceremony and culture both when these cultural ancestors left the Vatican and when they arrived back in Canada. Elders and knowledge keepers were able to greet these items as ancestors, which I think is really vital to this process. Now, the Vatican likely has other items in its collections, and Canada still has a lot of institutions, provincially, territorially, and federally, that should be repatriated to other nations. So I think this will set the stage for similar transfers.
Cody Grote, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And our Savannah Craig will also have a story for your evening newscast on those Vatican items. And that's your daytime newscast for this Monday. We're back again in a few hours for your evening newscast. Please join us then. Hi, miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next day.